and welcome. My name is Josen Diaz. I am Associate Professor in the Department of Ethnic Studies, as well as the Collaborative Research Element Chair of the Humanities Center. I want to first acknowledge that the land on which the university community gathers is the traditional and unceded territory of the Kumeyaay Nation. The university wants to pay respect to the citizens of the Kumeyaay Nation, both past and present, and their continuing relationship to their ancestral lands. Today, we have the tremendous privilege of listening and learning from Dr. Angharad Valdivia, who serves as a 2023-2024 Knapp Chair of the Liberal Arts. The Knapp Chair of the Liberal Arts was established in 1995 by a generous endowment from the estate of Mary and Churchill Knapp of La Jolla, California, longtime supporters of the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of San Diego. The earnings have helped to support the expenses of distinguished scholars who are appointed by the dean from 3 divisional areas: the arts and humanities, the natural sciences and mathematics, and the social sciences. The Knapp chairs contribute to the vitality and the centrality of the liberal arts in the college by teaching and interacting with students, collaborating with faculty, and presenting public lectures that engage our campus community in confronting humanity's urgent challenges. This academic year, we welcome 3 Knapp chairs, Dr. Alexander Demirov and Dr. Jeffrey Dresden last semester, and Dr. Angharad Valdivia this semester. The Knapp chairs are vital to the Humanities Center's aims to support collaborative research. Various collaborative research efforts housed in the Humanities Center strive to initiate, to convene, and to promote exceptional opportunities for student, faculty, community partnerships centered on the most pressing humanities issues. To this end, I also want to thank Dean Noel Norton, Humanities Center Director Brian Clack, and Assistant Director Linda Villa for their tremendous support for collaborative research and for Dr. Valdivia's visit to USD. I also want to thank the faculty and the students, all of whom are here, of the research working group for their commitment to critical and to engaged study. I'd now like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Nikki Usher, who has been instrumental to bringing Dr. Valdivia to campus. Dr. Usher?
We're doing an intro to an intro. So I just want to give some more context for our esteemed chair, Dr. Valdivia. As of this winter, she is emeritus faculty at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And I think her campus affiliations underscore the long-standing interdisciplinary nature of her work. She is the outgoing chair of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign's Department of Latino and Latina Studies, a research professor of media studies at the Institute of Communications Research, affiliate faculty in Gender and Women's Studies, Latin American and Caribbean Studies, the Unit for Interpretive Criticism, Global Studies, and the Women and Gender in Global Perspective. And actually, if that isn't enough, recently served as a faculty curator of the Spurlock Museum's Fall 2020 exhibit on quinceañeras, which is an amazing ode to Latinx girlhood culture that we should maybe think about importing here. Just to give you a sense of Dr. Valdivia's scholarship, her work is an interdisciplinary point of departure for questions that we share, but all too often only reckon with inside disciplinary boundaries. These include, but aren't limited to, global flows of culture, places and borders, race and social justice, gender studies, and diversity, equity, and inclusion in the academy itself. We're going to hear a little bit about Latinidad today, and if you're not familiar with that, Valdivia defines it as the, quote, contemporary situation of Latinidad, the dynamic processes of signifying and performing Latino peoples and its cultural forms in the United States and by implication globally. Dr. Valdivia reminds us that Latinidad is necessarily hybrid, and that Latinas, Latines are not a homogeneous cultural, ethnic, or racial category. And these are all, I think, really important insights into our humanity, which is sort of at the core of the humanities center that we're talking about. But also, I think I want to give you a sense of her scholarly accomplishments. There are many, but the overview is 11 books and edited volumes, the editorship of Communication Theory, which is one of the preeminent journals in the field of communication, the editor of the International Encyclopedia of Media Studies, And then her induction as the first Latina Fellow of the International Communication Association, and her appointment as the Distinguished Scholar in the National Communication Association. So at dinner the other night, Dr. Valdivia told a story about how she had gotten her first appointment at Penn State as all but dissertation. And usually for the students, in order to be a professor, right, you usually have to get your PhD, but sometimes professors sneak in without having finished it. And this idea of this esteemed senior colleague not having her dissertation done was just like, it didn't square, right? But this is the kind of human sort of element that Dr. Valdivia brings to everything that she does, because she reminds us to think about the importance of the humanities and what makes us human. So to that note, I think we should also acknowledge that Dr. Valdivia has a really strong connection to San Diego. You can see some family members here. And this biography, I think, plays into Dr. Valdivia's research. She was born in Chile, lived in Venezuela, and like many of you, Dr. Valdivia was a first-generation college student at that other big University of California down the street. And so I just want to say, like, more than just these amazing accomplishments and this really fascinating biography is something that's always been really important to me about Dr. Valdivia before I even met her, which is that she's always tried to fight for the humanity in the academy more generally. And she's worked so hard to make academia, which she would remind us is a 1,000-year-old institution, bend just a little bit more to be a little bit more inclusive and representative and critical, and has used her accumulated power in the academy to make space for new generations of scholars with her incredible mentorship. So with all of this in mind, I think Dr. Valdivia reminds us that the culture around us and how we engage with it and make meaning is part of what makes us human and shapes how we understand the world and ourselves. Dr. Valdivia reminds us that culture matters. It's bound up in politics, identity, power, and capitalism, and girlhood, and Barbie. And the pinkest of the pink girlhood is worth taking seriously for what it tells us about ourselves and the world we're living in. So without further ado, Dr. Valdivia, we're stoked for your lecture.
Okay. Thank you for wonderful, can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for wonderful introductions. It's really a pleasure to be here. I want to thank the Humanities Center at USD for providing me with the resources to join you as the Knapp Chair of the Humanities this semester. I especially want to thank Professor Nikki Usher, whose dedication has made this visit possible. As well, both Lindy Villa in the Humanities Center and Antonieta Mercado in the Department of Communication have gone out of their way to facilitate my visit. I thank the two introducers, who make me sound better than I think I am, but it has been really incredibly wonderful to be with faculty, colleagues, and students in this university. I'm especially delighted to present here at San Diego as one of my homes. My entire immediate family still lives in San Diego, and most of them are right here sitting in front of me. Thank you for coming. I am the only one of 6 siblings who left and stayed in the Midwest. 3 of my siblings, Rodrigo, Leopoldo, and Rebecca, earned degrees here at USD. I believe my father, Leopoldo, earned his deaconship here as well. And my sister from another mother, Anita, also went to USD. Tonight, I know that many of my family and close friends and colleagues are here to this lecture. I want to single out 2 people in particular, my mother, Vinca Nahuel de Valdivia, without whom I would not have had a girlhood, and also my lovely and wonderful husband, Cameron McCarthy, who comes with me to every stop. So thank you, everybody. Let me begin with my lecture. Okay. Tonight, I will be talking to you about Latina girlhood in mainstream media, from Dora to Barbie. I pay homage to the brilliant construction of the Barbie universe via my dress, and I did encourage people to wear pink, and I'm seeing that many of you did. Thank you very much. Some of you came up to me and said, I have no pink, and I said, oh, my house is right next door. I have some pink scarves for you. Okay, so I know I did not play with Barbies as a child. I did not own any. Yes, I recognize that Barbillion is an inescapably dominant cultural narrative. Yet I recognize that Barbillion is, that it cannot be dismissed. The joy that it unleashed was, unescapable. And joy is important. Joy is important. The masses of pink that attended the movie making at the biggest hit of the summer of 2023, and indeed the biggest grossing movie of 2023, period, must be acknowledged. Side note, summer and fall 2023 brought to you by Girl Culture. Barbie plus Taylor Swift generated billions for the US economy. The fact that Barbie was produced and rolled out with such fanfare is massive. It's a movie produced by women about a doll whose name is Barbie. Ynon Kreiz, Mattel CEO, sees it as a template to capture the value of Mattel's intellectual property. And one conservative estimate suggests that the movie has made at least $125 million for Mattel. To bring it full circle, tonight we're talking about Latina girlhood. But make no mistake, girlhood is big money, and the slow, tenuous, nonlinear visibility of the Latina girl is part and parcel of the commodification of Latinidad and girlhood, wherein contemporary mainstream target and represent girls as subjects of post-feminist neoliberal programming. Girl studies as an offshoot of gender studies follows a traditional path of research focusing on dominant culture women, white, middle class, and cisgendered, before slowly branching out to include other races and ethnicities, a global terrain, and a wider range of sexualities, and even to push beyond binary systems of classification. Girl studies obviously focuses on an age-specific category, so it expands gender studies by adding gender specificity. Anything from birth to 18 classifies as a girl. However, the category of girl culture is far broader. For example, I would classify Barbie as girl culture, even though it wasn't just about girls, and it was not just girls from 0 to 18 who attended the movie. Furthermore, girling is something that happens to women across the age spectrum. For example, the women protagonists of Sex and the City and the reboot entitled And Just Like That are often referred to as girls. They're now in their 50s. As with broader gender studies, girl studies as an academic discipline originally focuses on white, middle-class, cisgendered girls. My presentation focuses on the Latina girl, whose visibility has expanded from a light-skinned, middle-class girl to encompass a broader range of girls with nonetheless definite foregrounding of the telenovela type. That is the ideal of beauty: light brown skin, perfect hair, brown-eyed Latina girl. As you can tell from my references, I'm a media studies scholar who focuses on the mainstream media. Therefore, I will draw from network television shows and post-network platform streaming, Hollywood film, popular music, and digital culture. I see the mainstream, drawing on Antonio Gramsci, as a terrain of struggle. Within the mainstream, girls are used as symbols and tools for larger forces to battle over political, economic, cultural, and educational issues. Of course, girls have agency. Girls speak out as well as being spoken for. Moreover, girls are big business, so their presence in the mainstream is due to a range of factors. In the contemporary, converged, and synergized environment of media production and distribution, girl culture generates cultural products known as IP, or intellectual property, ideally designed to sell across a wide range of platforms and across a global terrain. Moreover, contemporary mainstream media target and represent girls as subjects of post-feminist neoliberal programming. My focus on Latina girls draws on Latinx studies scholarship. As this talk's description foregrounds, Dora comes into being in the year 2000, the same year that the census revealed that Hispanics were the most numerous minority in the US. surpassing the numbers of African Americans. Media studies scholars have produced excellent research on the production by and presence of African Americans in mainstream media. As well, the U.S. national imaginary largely allowed for a binary formulation of racial identity, black and white. The increasing acknowledgement that Hispanics, the name of the census category of the time, that they existed, were present and demanded visibilization, ushered in increased visibility. A salient feature of this visibilization was the fact that Latinx had spending power, and the expansion of markets and consumers is a key feature of capitalism. And we live in a capitalist economy, and the mainstream media is a capitalist business. I keep repeating this because we cannot get confused about this, that good intentions are not necessarily part of the equation. These are profit-maximizing and risk-minimizing enterprises. Nonetheless, Latinx as a visible category in mainstream media remain stuck in the middle, between blackness and whiteness, a move which attempts to fix all three ethnic categories outside of hybridity and within an essential purity. I also draw on the foundational concepts proposed by Shria Moraga and Gloria in their 1981 edited collection, This Bridge, Call My Back. This book called out for an intersectional approach, inclusive of vectors of race and ethnicity, class, and sexuality. As well, proposing the bridge metaphor calls attention to issues of labor. Latinx serve as a bridge, an in-between ethnicity, represented as different enough to be ethnic, but not dark enough to be too different. The bridge metaphor functions both as a passageway to understanding, a way to cross over into a desired destination, and a way to acknowledge labor and burden, translating and explaining forces to different elements of dominant culture. Exploring existing and new identities, the book called out the unpaid and uncredited labor that women of color provide toward a cultural understanding benefiting the dominant culture at the expense of women of color. Within girls' studies, and dating back to 2004, Anita Harris proposed two types of girl, the can-do girl and the at-risk girl. Media studies scholars of girlhood have been finding these girls throughout mainstream popular culture. More often than not, the can-do girl has been a dominant culture girl, with ethnicity being a contributing factor to at-risk status. However, one of the progressive ruptures we're beginning to notice is the Latina can-do girl. A great example is Elena of Avalor. I mean, I don't know if you can get a more can-do thing here. She's coming at you. She can do it, okay? And, of course, we have here Monse from On My Blog, where this is the kind of Afro-Latina that would have been, even 10 or 15 years ago, cast as an at-risk girl, but now is recast in a can-do narrative, okay? I alert you to the presence of this wonderful book by Diana Leon Boyce on Elena, Princesa of the Periphery. The entire book is about the can-do Elena of Avalor. Okay. I want to alert you to the fact that nearly all the girls which I will be talking about today are can-do girls, because Latina girlhood is articulated to contemporary discourses of post-feminism and neoliberalism. Discourses that prioritize empowerment through the individual, especially enacted through the marketplace. Whereas I'm going back to 2000, or actually to 1998, because I will talk a little bit about Josefina, the American girl. Girl culture has existed for far longer than that. In fact, Barbie the movie references porcelain dolls as the precursors of Barbie in 1959. But truly, books and toys targeting girls have been around for centuries, dating back at least to the 1920s with Disney as it began to ascend into a globally dominant producer of children media content. There has also been an intentional connection undergirded by licensing as related to intellectual property ownership between media content and attendant product sales. So media girls such as Dora who's created as a media product, generate the sale of dolls and other products. Conversely, dolls generate media and other products. So Josefina, the American Girl, was originally a doll, so was Barbie, and that generates a range of movies, books, and other media. So that's what happens. You can, if you launch a media girl, you are already looking into the product, the licensing, and if you're launching a movie, you're already looking into a movie. If you're looking into a doll, then you're also looking into the media. So those two things go together. You cannot have success in the contemporary media environment, doll environment, without both of those being launched out to us. Okay. So let's go back to 2000, when the U.S. Census results revealed that Latinx were the most numerous minority in the U.S. Coincidentally, in 2000, Dora the Explorer began a successful run on Nickelodeon. From absence to presence, we encounter a range of familiar tropes, ascending narratives, and some genuine ruptures, both in terms of temporary flashpoints of visibility, as well as in new social themes in which the Latina girl functions as a symbol of an ethnicity whose population is ascending in numbers and making political and cultural demands. In other words, drawing on Stuart Hall, we witness continuities and ruptures in Latina girl visibilization, though to be sure, far more continuities than ruptures, and moreover, even within the ruptures, we can discern continuities. I will proceed through the types of visibility I have identified in the past 2 decades. These visibilities coexist, meaning that even as we witness instances of protagonism, we can also still see absence and minimalism. After exploring types of visibility, I will move on to 3 tropes: quinceañeras, STEM girls, and issues of labor. And then we will move on to Barbie, although she'll keep coming up. Visibility. In a chapter on Latina Girlhood, my co-author, Stephanie Perez, and I identified 4 developments foregrounding intersections of gender, race, ethnicity, age, sexuality, socioeconomic class, and national origin, resulting in complex and potentially diverse visibilizations. First, television and film function in a converged, synergized post-network era. The multiplicity of streaming options provide expanded possibilities for narratives and formats. Second, interrelated filters produce designs of girls and women in popular culture. Specifically, post-feminism and neoliberal feminism foreground femininity, consumption, and individualism, separating collective activism from self-improvement through the marketplace. Scholars of post-feminism and post-race highlight that visibilizations foregrounding empty signifiers depoliticize and domesticate social movements while ignoring calls for structural and material redistribution. Third, an acknowledgement of diversity as the commodification of difference traffics ethnic hipness to new audience segments, resulting in the inclusion of ethnic others in mainstream narratives. And fourth, public demands for increased diversity of stories, actors, and producers pressure an industry that remains stubbornly Eurocentric. These mutually coexisting and sometimes internally contradictory developments contribute to and structure the appearance of Latina girls in mainstream television and film. First type of visibility, absence. The first type of visibility is a non-visibility. In other words, it is absence. In mainstream media production and representation, omission is never complete, as the visibility and meaning of ethnicity has to be accomplished via a reference to an other, even if an absent or implicit other. Latinidad is present even in its absence. For example, in Westerns or even in Sex and the City, you can't have Western expansion or a major metropolitan area such as New York City without Latinx. Nevertheless, we can look back at shows and movies where the whiteness of the cast belies the multiplicity of races and ethnicities in that setting and location. And here I just have one slide on Charmed, the original show, and then when it was rebooted. It was rebooted as much more ethnic, diverse, and also sexuality diverse. And my colleague Isabel Molina Guzman has been researching and writing about the fact that audiences have reacted sometimes very virulently to the ethnicization and queering of this show. Okay, and the audience includes the original actresses of that show. They have been quite public about, just vilifying the reboot. Okay. Second, a tenuous presence. Latina girls began to appear occasionally and more regularly as we moved from 2000 to 2024. The near omission period of Latinx led to inclusion via symbolic annihilation, such as America Ferrera in Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants being the only Latina and person of color in an ensemble cast of 4, 3 of whom are white girls. Sidekicks traditionally foreground a white protagonist supported by a character of color. As another strategy of differential inclusion, sidekicks, such as Miranda Sanchez and Lizzie McGuire, perform a degree of presence and representation, yet foreground a white main character or protagonist. Miranda Sanchez also represents the ambiguous Latina. Her Latinidad is so subtle, indeed, we seldom get to hear her last name, so she's just Miranda, okay? And unless you caught the Day of the Dead episode, where Miranda explicitly links her identity to Mexico as a Mexican-American, you would miss the fact that she's Latina altogether. Unless you want to read Latinidad into big, puffy hair products in your hair, okay? I should have done that today as well, okay? Other Latinx sidekicks include, and there's so many, I just kind of picked 4 here, Adrian Lee in The Secret Life of the American Teenager, Gloria in Cadet Kelly, Jackie Cook in Veronica Mars, and Valentina in How I Met Your Father, with Francia Reza playing 2 of those characters. The ensemble cast approach to inclusion and diversity in television shows and movies generates possibilities for visibilizing Latina girls. Ensemble casts provide strategies of differential inclusion, illustrated by light and ambiguous ethnics, such as in Barbie. Film and television shows include ensemble casts with 1 Latina, or as in the case of Barney, 2 Latinas. And here we have, in case you don't know, this is Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez, who were in the cast of the Barney and Friends show. Okay, in the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants films, Carmen / America Ferrera is the brown Latina whose different, fuller body shape does not impede her from fitting into the magic pants shared with her thinner friends. Conversely, fair-skinned U.S.-Argentinian actress Alexis Bledel plays a Greek girl in Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, demonstrating the malleability of the Latina body. Indeed, in Gilmore Girls, a series with a relative absence of ethnic characters and the symbolic annihilation of the few ethnic characters, Bledel is one of 2 white protagonists in a mother-daughter duo. The original girl group in Disney's The Cheetah Girls franchise, and The Cheetah Girls itself is a metaphor for racial mixing, right? And I just want to say that in my house, we had a Cheetah Girl fans, and at one point, we had Cheetah Girl suitcase, Cheetah Girl underwear. I mean, everything in that house was Cheetah Girls, which speaks to the great licensing that you have to roll out with a show like this, right? So whenever I talk about this, I'm not suggesting that I'm outside of its effects. I'm right in the middle there. I still got Cheetah Girl stuff in my house, okay? So the original group of Cheetah Girls was composed of 4 girls from New York City: Chanel, a Latina; Galleria, a biracial African-American Italian; Aqua, a Black Texan; and Sabrina, an ambiguous working-class white girl. Chanel identifies as Latina, though she explains she's a little bit of every Latin American national origin. A classic example of what I call an ambivalent ambivalence. We know she's Latina, but we don't know what type of Latina. Following the success of the Cheetah Girls, Disney Channel released High School Musical, featuring multiracial ensemble cast. Latina protagonist Gabriela Montez / Vanessa Hudgens was so ambiguously Latina that her Latinidad was nearly imperceptible, much less perceptible than Miranda's. An occasional television show or movie populated mostly by Latinx stand out as an exception to the rule, such as the George Lopez Show and Stuck in the Middle. The former sometimes exploring Latinx-specific issues, and the latter largely proceeding with a nearly imperceptible amount of Latinidad. The Spy Kids franchise, beginning in 2001, features Alex Carmen Cortez, Alexa Peña Vega, as a growing-up superhero, beginning in her girlhood. Directed, written, and partly produced by Robert Rodriguez, the latest movie in the franchise, Spy Kids Armageddon, released in 2023, features Everly Carganilla, who delivered a heart-wrenching performance in Netflix's one-season The Chair as Juju, the adopted daughter to Sandra Oh's character Professor Ji-yoon. Juju takes it upon herself to rescue her Latinidad by enlisting her Korean grandfather in helping her celebrate Dia de los Muertos. In two recent reboots populated by Latinx, Latina girls experience a range of issues. And one day at a time, Elena, the daughter, comes out as a non-binary character and celebrates a non-traditional quince. In the short-lived reboot of Party of Five, much of the adultified duties fall to Valentina and eldest sister Lucia, who try to keep their family of 5 children afloat after their parents have been deported. Protagonism. Latinx actors playing Latinx leads grounded in a Latinx community or surviving in predominantly white multicultural or magical settings while confronting issues of othering and ethnic differentiation are much less frequent. Phew, that was a bad sentence. I'm glad that is not frequent. Okay, slide here, Dora. Dora stands out as an agentic explorer. In fact, the original name was Dora la Exploradora. That's why Dora is called Dora, okay? That sounded a little circular, but it's not. Okay, Dora stands out as an agentic explorer, a can-do girl who problem solves her way through that weird island that could be in Mexico, Puerto Rico, or Ohio. And the reason I say that is because me and my colleague, Susan Harewood, published an article about it, because if you look at that island, there are sometimes pyramids, maybe Mexico, sometimes palm trees on a beach, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and then the oak tree that, of course, we think is from Ohio. Okay, but the funny thing about this article was that we were actually looking at like fan groups and fan sites, and people there really literally throw down. They're like, no, she's Dominican, no, she's Puerto Rican, and by people, I don't mean children. I mean adults, okay? So people are really invested in this, and that just shows you the kind of different types of fandom and engagement that media generates, including little Latinas. In live-action content, sometimes the closer characters get to protagonism, the more ambiguous their Latinidad becomes. For example, Alex Russo, Selena Gomez, is an Italian, Mexican, American wizard, protagonist in Disney's Wizards of Waverly Place, whose only moment of explicit Latinidad occurs in the quinceañera episode, wherein she rejects the cultural practice and performs a classic Disney body switching with her mother that resolves the dilemma. The mom wants a quinceañera, so the mom gets to celebrate it in her daughter's body. And then her daughter just like, whatever, she keeps, she keeps doing a side-eye and stuff like that. Similarly, fair-skinned Cuban-American actress Bella Thorne portrays Cece Jones opposite of Zendaya's Rocky Blue in Disney's Shake It Up. Cece does not bear signifiers of Latinidad, instead blending into whiteness, as is customary of Disney kids programming. Here I hope that this works. This was a TikTok after the Super Bowl to show you that Dora is still with us. Dora is still in digital social media. So let's hope it works.
False start is when an offensive player illegally moves after lining up for, but prior to the snap. Where are we going? Back 5 yards! Because it's a penalty.
Yeah, so Dora remains a pedagogue. Dora teaches dominant culture kids Spanish, and Dora teaches us what football stuff. So let me go back here. Oh no, I went all the way to sorry about that. So we're gonna have to just I hope none of you have motion sickness, because you're gonna have it right now. Okay, there's Dora. Okay. And that, that. Okay. Protagonism. Okay. A notable addition to Latina girl protagonism is Wednesday, played by Jenna Ortega, or Stuck in the Middle. Sometimes categorized in the comedy genre, I don't know why, this show much more accurately fits into goth, light horror genre. Directed by Tim Burton and riffing off the Addams Family, Wednesday, as the protagonist, performs a confident, assertive, and defiant subjectivity. And whereas her family is Latinx, her mark on the teen ecosystem which she inhabits references Latinx names and celebrations such as Dia de los Muertos, but uncharacteristically, at least in the first season, she does not celebrate a quinceañera. Wednesday is a Latina protagonist with no fear and great intellectual powers, whose Latinidad is part of her character and marks her as different among a school of different students. Jenna Ortega's protagonism resembles characters played by Selena Gomez in the many shows that she's creating and or acting in, such as Only Murders in the Building, as the character of Melba Mora, one of 3 protagonists in a 3-person ensemble cast, who's also a confident queer Latina, whose Latinidad is part of her character and not an oddity that sets her apart. She also produces other shows such as Selena Plus Chef, making her as one of the very few Latina, especially girls, who have come out of the Disney system, who has survived and thrived and become a producer. Having talked you through types of visibility, I now shift to emerging and salient narratives that speak to the presence of Latinx and contemporary discourses. Quinceañeras. Quinceañeras, a coming-of-age celebration for girls throughout most of the Americas, marks the moment when a young person, usually but not always a girl, turns 15. This rite of passage marks a symbolic transition from girlhood to adulthood. Quinceañeras provide a nearly irresistible opportunity for mainstream media to include a Latinx party, with most of the ethnic marker elements so often repeated in audiovisual mainstream media narratives. As an indication of the presence and visibility of Latinas and Latinidad, quinceañeras make a de rigueur appearance in most mainstream media content that includes and or focuses on Latina girls. Via quinceañeras, the girls and their mediatized experiences as celebrants of this ritual provide mainstream media culture with a perfect trope, a bridge for potentially understanding Latina girls and Latinidad, and further commodifying an ethnicity whose marketization and exotification yields profitable returns. Whether the narrative focuses on Latinidad or includes a sidekick or peripheral Latino person or subplot, quinceañeras have become a trope of authenticity in mainstream media, signifying the presence of Latina girls. The work on quinceañeras examines their assertion of gender fluidity and their efforts to valorize and visibilize their experiences in a mainstream popular culture that tends to marginalize and demonize Latina girls. Indeed, quinceañeras are one of the 3 tropes in which Latinx are contemporarily visibilized in mainstream media. The other 2 are Dia de los Muertos and Navidad, or some form of religious, usually, sorry, let me turn this, I don't know what this is on. There we go. Religious or usually Catholic celebration. All 3 of these tropes involve celebration and religion, but only quinceañeras focus on girls. In the mediatized trope quinceañeras, the celebrations and the girls themselves often function as bridges between Latinidad and dominant culture, absorption of cultural rituals for spice and style. Nonetheless, the repeated visibilization of quinceañeras includes ruptures as well as continuities. Latinas asserting agency, presence, and joy is a revolutionary act under contemporary conditions. The sheer cumulative effect of repeated quinceañeras contributes a new trope, with at least 4 different versions. My colleagues and I, Stephanie Perez and Zulema Herrera, have written an article about this, and we found 4 major types of quinceañeras in mainstream media. One of them are quinceañeras are about the mothers. So a lot of times that a quinceañera shows up in a show, the girl doesn't want to do it. The mother wants to do it because she didn't get to do it, because whatever. But they're really doing it for the mom. They don't want to do it, the girls. And in the case of The Wizards of Waverly Place, That's perfectly resolved because you just shift, switch bodies. So everything is resolved through that. So that's one way. Another way that quinceañeras appear in mainstream popular culture is quinceañeras serve to redeem the white protagonist. So here I have Kevin Costner in a movie called McFarlane USA, where he's really kind of blowing at his dad. He misses his daughters, whatever, and then the whole Mexican-American community in which they live rescues his paternity, by throwing a quinceañera where he gets to redeem himself as a man and as a father in this setting, okay? Quinces combine tradition and modernity. So here we have tons and tons of movies and television shows. This is just one of them, entitled Quinceañera, where the girl has to navigate between what she wants to do, what her parents want her to do, the way that the quinceañera will be enacted, whether they want a mass, whether they want to go up and pay homage to the Virgin of Guadalupe, whether they just want, a wild dance at the end of their quinceañera. These are all kind of negotiations between tradition and modernity. Okay. And quinceañeras also are now represented as a site of hybridity, of Afro-Latinidades, of indigeneity, and of queerness. And I've already mentioned the one on One Day at a Time. There are many shows where you have a queer quinceañera, and here you have two quinceañeras stuck in the middle, the one for Harley, which she turned into a chemistry quinceañera, and then the one for her sister Georgie, where they, in both of this, the quinceañera episodes and Stuck in the Middle, nobody ended up being able to come except the family. So it turned to be a very kind of different kind of quinceañera celebrated within the family. Here I have two more slides. One of the ways that girls are using quinceañera is to voice and to participate as political, cultural citizens. So these are girls using their quinceañera dresses in San Antonio, and this was not the only such occasion where they took to the streets to generate and to get out the Latinx vote. So they're stepping in their quinceañera dresses and parading to the streets to recruit voting, okay? And then, I promise this is the last quinceañera, although, I've written so much about quinceañera and I'm finishing a book on quinceañeras. This is why it's just going on, there's a lot of quinceañera. Okay, but this is a case of what McCarthy and Balut call philitainment, which is, the quinceañeras turn into an occasion for philanthropy, for neoliberal philanthropy, where you kind of give poor girls a quinceañera, and you give them the dress, and you give them jewelry, and in this case, you showcase them in Good Morning America. Now, this one show was really kind of surprising because there was a lot of contextualization and a lot of history, and it was unexpected when I saw it. So it was both this charitable kind of, performance, but also it really had a little bit of depth. Okay, STEM girl. Given that Latina girlhood is produced within a contemporary cultural context where the go-getting, can-do girl represents a dominant femininity, it is not surprising that one of the narrative threads is that of the STEM girl. We live in a historical moment where all things STEMs are valorized, and in our educational system, our children are told in no uncertain terms that STEM is the only path that will lead to successful career outcomes. STEM as a discursive formation unsurprisingly targets boys, so that by college, top engineering schools are populated in their incoming classes mostly by boys. A global sampling of boys, but nonetheless boys. Responding to a broad range of criticisms of the overwhelming visibilization of boys, both white and Asian, in popular cultural narratives about science and mathematics, creators of popular culture and streaming platforms such as Disney have launched the ethnic STEM girl. While this trope usually applied to a white male, through Harley from Stuck in the Middle and Gabriela from High School Musical and many other STEM Latinas, it is gendered, girled, and ethnicized through Latinidad. The can-do post-feminist STEM girl performs math and/or science competence while remaining cute and lovable. Her labor secures her a place in a gendered hierarchy without questioning any structural or systemic issues that might impinge on girls' academic achievement. Whether a single character such as Honey Lemon and Gogo Tamago from Big Hero 6 to Loretta Callisto from Miles from Tomorrowland, Latina girls continue to add to this emergent trope. There are at least two types of Latina STEM girls in contemporary media, the serious and the zany. First, the serious. Gabriela in High School Musical represents two overlapping tropes of Latina girlhood. The light-skinned, barely perceptible Latina, and the new face of STEM girlhood. Her scientific prowess leads her team to a championship, but that does not keep her from nailing a leading role in the High School Musical and getting together with high school heartthrob and basketball star Troy Bolton. Gabriela manages to balance all of her interests. Classic. Another Latina STEM girl, I actually assigned this to one of my classes, and I'm still apologizing to them because it's such a silly show. I'm embarrassed that I made them watch it, so, I'm just telling you. Okay, another Latina STEM girl, Ashley Garcia, from Ashley Garcia, Genius in Love, originally named The Expanding Universe of Ashley Garcia, was billed as the, quote, only 15-and-a-half-year-old robotics engineer and rocket scientist, unquote. Or to the wise. There are no more rocket scientists, but whatever. Okay, Ashley has no clue about being a girl since her life has been devoted to science. Therefore, she bridges between the serious STEM girl and the zany STEM Latina. She is a serious scientist, but she's a very zany girl, having missed the basic lessons of teenage femininity, but not enough not to suffer a huge crush on a jock. In fact, the series is really about Ashley's love interest. Leon Boyce and Busi Ferro link Ashley to Ugly Betty, another Latina who transitioned from awkward to normative femininity. Whereas the following zany STEM girls are zany scientists, Ashley is a zany girl and not a zany scientist. Let's move to the zany STEM girl. Harley, the protagonist of Stuck in the Middle, played by a young Jenna Ortega, embodies a new hybrid trope within Latina girlhood. Her budding engineering reminds us of the zany inventor who creates havoc and is not meant to be taken seriously. Harley's character is thus both continuous with previous tropes and a little bit of a rupture. Furthermore, in that this trope advances the protagonist's ability to enter the beautified world of femininity and the heteronormative ability to secure the popular boy, this STEM girl is firmly within a post-feminist sensibility. Whereas she's touted as an engineering whiz and inventor, Harley's inventions often go awry. Mayhem ensues, and all is resolved by the end of the episode, usually with the help of her older brother. In 2015, Danica McKellar, for those of you who are old enough, she was in, oh my God, I just forgot the name. Wonder Years. She was Winnie in the Wonder Years. Danica McKellar is now a producer. She grew up, but don't forget Winnie in the Wonder Years. Okay, anyways, Danica McKellar produced the show MC Squared, with the explicit purpose of showcasing a group of 5 STEM girls. They were all incredibly cute and thin. Victoria Vida plays the role of Adrienne Adams, the Spanish scientist in the mix who always wears couture clothes and very high heels, but who, nonetheless, is associated with Latinx signifiers. Almost always when she's on the scene, there's a background of salsa music, and there are allusions to a flattening of Latinidad, Spanish, Mexican, Caribbean. What's the difference? She also approaches her scientific tasks as though she's cooking, preparing everything in a kitchen. Isabel, the younger sister of the titular character of Elena of Avalor, is also a budding scientist whose inventions often generate results that were not necessarily intended. The zaniness disempowers the effect of the STEM trope as it devolves into laughter. Labor. Tacking back to this bridge called My Back, and the fact that labor is often subsumed, ignored, or backgrounded, I identified labor as a marker of Latinidad. Dating back to Josefina, the American girl, we can see that the Latina girl is linked to labor. Whereas other American girls' accessories up to that time were mostly toys and clothing, originally Josefina's accessories included tools for work. Beyond that explicit labor reference, by and large, a Latina girl functions as a bridge, performing labor or translation and interpretation, sometimes linguistically and almost always culturally. For example, Harley in Stuck in the Middle is the bridge mediating on 4 levels between the older and younger siblings, between the boys and the girls, between the children and the parents, and between the family and the broader community. Harley often solves feuds between the twins and younger sister Daphne. She's usually coming up with creative ways to end tensions between the parents and her siblings. In relation to her sisters, Harley mediates between the vain cheerleader and the sporty sister. In the neighborhood, Harley mediates between the perfectionist, Peter's family, and her less than perfect, often messy family. In sum, Harley performs enough of the labor of bridging to narratively drive a Disney television show for 3 seasons. Quinceañeras, the celebrants, and the event also function as a bridge, translating Latinidad to dominant U.S. culture, translating a hybrid transnational teenhood to their family, as they're often the bridge between one national identity and another. STEM girls, too, have to go between their families and mainstream culture to assert the value of science. Okay, I know many of you just came here for Barbie. That's okay, doesn't hurt my feelings. Okay, so here we are. We finally got to Barbie. Okay, I know many of you have been maybe impatiently waiting for this, and here we are. Barbie, the movie, released in summer 2023. Brilliantly marketed, so there was no way you could turn without seeing it. I don't know about you, but as I went through my life, where there was food, clothing, makeup, everything was Barbie. That's a London buzz, and it was a transnational thing. We also went to Spain, and everybody was also going to Barbie wearing pink. So it wasn't just a US thing, it was a transnational success. Okay. I include Barbie in this presentation because it pertains to Latina girlhood. Within Barbie, Gloria, played by America Ferrera, and Sasha, played by Ariana Greenblatt, stand in for Latinas and Latinidad. Their function, salience, and narrative arc are representative of the status of Latinas and Latina girlhood. Whereas the protagonist is Barbie, stereotypical Barbie that is, the narrative could not have advanced without the labor of the Latina characters. Their role in the movie concords with many of the items I have mentioned in this presentation. First, the type of visibility is that of the sidekick. Second, they literally perform the labor that makes the movie go around. They help Barbie escape from Mattel. They accompany Barbie back to Barbie Land. They shake Barbie out of her stupor. They bring back the other Barbies from their temporary insanity into masculine ideology. And they drive Barbie to the doctor at the end of the movie. I'm trying not to plot spoil it here. I'm not sure I did a good job. Before proceeding to the inability of dominant culture to see this very obvious labor, I want to backtrack a little bit to the road to Barbie. Oh, here we go. Greta Gerwig wrote and directed, co-wrote and directed Barbie, and wrote and directed Lady Bird in 2017, for which she received Oscar nominations as director and original screenplay. It did not escape the notice of Latinx media studies scholars that the narrative of Lady Bird was very similar to Real Women Have Curves in 2001, about the difficult mother-daughter relationship and moving out of the working class. Indeed, the protagonist of Real Women Have Curves was a young America Ferrera. Ana Castillo for the New York Times writes that we cannot blame Gerwig for the relative silence which Real Women received. But it does speak to a Hollywood that is much more willing to celebrate narratives produced, directed, and written about white girls than produced, directed, and written by Latinas about Latina girls. I also want to take you on a little background on Ariana Greenblatt, with credit due to Zoila Leon Boyce, who mentioned this to me this morning. Ariana Greenblatt played the Daphne character in Stuck in the Middle, who's a very, very unusual character. She's a little character that refuses the kind of the femininity of Disney shows. Her hair was always messy. She always wore really, she had really wacky outfits, and she was a really kind of unusual girl character in that show, okay? And many of you may also remember Bratz dolls, which in 2006 surpassed Barbie as the best-selling doll. There's a huge legal battle that ensued between the makers of Barbie and Mattel, okay? And so you may have questions about that, but yeah, Mattel more or less won. Okay. Composed of hip hybrid girlhoods, the Bratz included a Sasha, the black Sasha. Okay, the black girl in the Bratz line was the black Sasha, but in the movie, Greta Gerwig implicitly references the Bratz dolls in that scene where they go to the high school to find Sasha, and Sasha's part of the Mean Girls, and they're all set up there like the Bratz dolls, although in Barbie, Sasha is the Latina, the mean girl who calls Barbie a fascist. And that might be one of my favorite lines in the movie when Barbie's crying and she says, "I'm not a fascist. I do not make the trains run on time." So, Greta Gerwig said they tried to get her to remove that line from the movie, and she goes, "I'm leaving it in because people who get it are going to laugh." And I did laugh. I got it. Okay. By 2023, Mattel launches an American Barbie, which makes it the first Honduran American Barbie, America Barbie, based on America Ferrera, which makes it the first Honduran American Barbie, and makes, according America Ferrera has been endlessly interviewed about this, makes her very, very happy. Despite all of this labor, reviewers of the movie were somehow unable to discern it. All the labor, I mean, that the Latinas did in the movie and in the narrative. I have time only for one representative review. In an article entitled, "Barbie is Brilliant, Beautiful, and Fun as Hell," Richard Brody for The New Yorker locates the action of bringing back the Barbies on stereotypical Barbie. He says, quote, "When Barbie returns home, she finds it transformed into a manosphere, full of Kens, slaking grudges against Barbies and Barbie's content, with subservience to Kens. And she has to plot to restore it to its ostensibly original form as a feminist paradise." So I'm not sure we were watching the same movie, because that's not really what went down, but that's the way that it's gone down in the reviews of the movie in mainstream media. Okay, so without a doubt, the Gloria America Ferrera monologue stand out as the articulation of the tyranny of happy feels within post-feminist culture. And America's rendition earned her an Oscar nomination as supporting actress. Greta Gerwig has reported that this monologue was written with extensive input from America Ferrera, and that the cast and crew were in tears during the 2 days it took to film it. The speech has generated numerous memes, TikToks, etc. And here I share one put together by Latina actresses of that monologue. And I apologize for this is a basic slide, but really, I really have to give credit to my graduate students who really helped me with slide production. So when I'm away from them, this is what you end up seeing. They just, they're the ones who do the labor. Okay. Okay, so let's hope that this works. So here it is.
It's literally impossible
To be a woman.
to be a woman.
To be a woman.
You are so beautiful and so smart. And it kills me that you don't think you're good enough.
Like we have to always be extraordinary?
But somehow, we're always doing it wrong.
You have to be thin, but not too thin.
And you can't ever say that you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy.
But also, you have to be thin.
You have to be thin.
You have to be thin.
You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass.
You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean.
You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas.
You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time.
You have to be a career woman.
But also, always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane.
But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining.
You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much.
Or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood.
But always stand out.
And always be grateful. But never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful.
You have to never get old.
Never be rude, never show off.
Never be selfish.
Never fall down, never fail.
Never show fear, never get out of line.
It's too hard.
It's too hard. It's too hard.
It's too contradictory.
And nobody ever gives you a medal or says thank you.
And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong,
But also, everything is your fault.
I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots just so people will like us.
And if all of that is also true for a doll just representing a woman,
Then I don't even know.
So that is a number of Latina actresses who, are who are reading that monologue that is endlessly shared on social media, in the news, etc. Without a doubt. Oh, no. So in sum, Barbie was intentionally produced with sensitivity to broad cultural representation. The first dance scene at Barbie's house includes a range of ethnicities, abilities, and body shapes. I couldn't find, and I didn't have time to do a screen capture of the fact that there was actually a young woman in a wheelchair in that opening dance scene. So you have different abilities, you have different races, and of course you have the protagonism of Margot Robbie as the central Barbie. But the pulling out of Latinas signifies their our inescapable presence in mainstream media, as supporting actors, as mediators, or as laborers, but always, oh, so cute. So in conclusion, this presentation foregrounds a space for critiquing, but also for celebrating fundamental advances. As I have often said, one cannot look for the revolution in the mainstream. One can look for small, openings, for the pushing of structures, and for something like this that would not have been able to have been produced even 10 years ago. So this is really a major step. Now, I have students who say, it's still too diluted. It's still not strong enough. Sure, I agree with that. But look at this, and if we could look at a Barbie movie of just 10 years ago, you would see the difference. Yes, yet the mainstream reveals a field of girlhood transformed by Latina subjects as characters, as actors, as producers, as sources of narratives and cultural practices, and as girls speaking out and asserting their cultural citizenship. As well, and I didn't have as much time to talk about it, but I have written about it extensively. If you notice, we are moving to include girls beyond the kind of telenovela type, and we have a range of other races or hybridities. You cannot nail down the race, but it's not clearly just purely a telenovela light brown girl. You have a range of other sexualities, and you have a range, in Barbie as well, a range of body shapes. Now, we have a lot of girls that I'm talking about, and yesterday I was talking to a feminist media studies class at the University of South Florida, and we were saying that there might be actually more of a range in the Latina girls than in Latina adult women, and this might have to do with the fact that girls are less threatening in this cultural terrain than an adult woman. So if you had that big of a range in an adult Latina woman, that would be a little bit more of a threatening inclusion than having it as girls. But I want to end by saying that I study girls because girls are the future of the world. And I think we should support them, love them, and empower them, not just individually, but structurally. Thank you.